cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we put violence in the happy box. I'm your host, the tingling for fun Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever who is here with me today.
Voiced by Mickey Dolenz, but just for this season, it's Henry Gilbert.
And who is on the line with us?
I'm Matthew J, and I'm aging as well as an entire character based around a Dustin Hoffman impression.
We all are. And today's episode is the Tick episode, The Tick versus The Tick.
Oh, you're strong, but you're no match for the Tick.
Barry, you're going to have to start making some sense.
So we have arrived in Fox Kids Land. I think the closest we've come to this has been, I don't know if we ever have approached Fox
Batman?
Kids Land.
Oh, no, we've done,
yeah.
we've done Batman and Spider-Man's in our future.
Listen, we've done like 30 episodes so far. I can't keep it all straight, but okay, we're making a return to Fox Kids Land.
I don't think of Batman as Fox anymore.
Yeah,
Certainly not.
I guess I'm thinking of this is the one Saturday morning Fox thing we're doing. I think Spider-Man was a weekday.
Well, no, it's not
show.
one Saturday morning. That was ABC.
No, they can't own the word one. Anyways, forget everything I said. We're talking about the Tick today.
Yes, yeah. The Tick was such a fun early parody of superhero things that coming at it from an interesting angle that now I feel like every human does. It's what Marvel just does all the time is what the Tick did 25 years ago.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it during this podcast, but I was watching this episode and I was thinking the entire time, this is not for children. This is so dry and absurdist and observational. It has some fun, comedy and slapstick and, goof 'em ups, but it's so Venture Brothers-y. We'll get to the connection soon, but
Yes.
I can't stop thinking of the Venture Brothers when I'm thinking about the Tick now.
I love that they call it a club, but they want to just say bar. They're at a superhero bar.
They have to drink water. Everyone has that's soda or this is water.
You know what? They never say I'll have a sip of my soda.
Yeah.
Arthur, we're talking about the episode now, but Arthur in the Sidekick Club is holding a beer.
Yes,
They're not
that's true.
more root beer, Arthur. They never point out something different. So there's plausible deniability, but characters are drinking alcohol in this episode.
Well, this episode breaks a lot of rules that they would have to have instituted on them after
Yeah.
it. But the Tick was so ahead of its time. Every comment on superheroes does this in the contest of who saw it first that we must do every episode. I mean, I was there for day one on this just because I was a Fox Kids viewer, so I was going to see whatever was on there.
I was too. I was there probably watching Eek the Cat and Terrible Thunder Lizards and whatever else was happening. Probably Bobby's World. I was in my last years of watching that.
Yes.
Hey, that got the What a Cartoon treatment.
It did.
It's now in the canon.
Hey, actually, that's 2 Fox Kids shows we've done.
God damn it.
Yeah.
I'm so wrong about everything. I promise I'll be right from now on this episode only.
I was a little baby, but I definitely watched this on TV, and of course it went way over my head. I probably thought it was boring when I was first watching it, but I definitely watched it a lot. And I remember pre-Venture Brothers going to comic conventions with my dad, and Hank, you might remember this. Remember when every comic convention, half of the floor was bootleg DVDs?
Hell yeah, the greatest. I love that.
That's when I would see the Tick playing on TV, and I'd see big hairy dudes staring at TVs and going dop dwee da da da, and I'm like, what? Why is this cartoon? Why are adults obsessed with this? And then I got back into it when I was like 13, I guess, and I was like, oh wow, this is exactly what I want. It's like a parody, and then of course Venture Brothers rolled around and was exactly that from one of the same guys.
I'm sure it was a big hit for kids TV. It got more than one season. I think it was fairly popular. It got a video game too, but I think it really caught on with adults when Comedy Central re-aired it in an animation block.
Yeah.
So
I remember that.
In that animation block, it was Duckman, Dr. Katz, The Critic, and The Tick.
I remember.
Yes.
Oh my God, you just unlocked of lost memory in my brain. I watched the shit out of that animation block.
It was a great block, and I think that's where The Critic got a resurgence in its fan base, and that's where I actually saw the rest of Duckman that I missed because USA would put it on at weird days and weird times.
Yeah, that was when Comedy Central, after South Park really hit it big, they're like, we could do more animated series, so they license all these shows, but the issue with all of them was if we wanted to do more of these episodes of network shows. They cost network money, and we're not paying that. We're Comedy Central. In the before Dave Chappelle was on, Comedy Central really wasn't into paying big bucks for anything.
Yeah, let's make Minora Team.
Oh God,
well, that's Adult Swim, but
yeah, it really is.
What was it Freak Show? What's the show?
Yes, Freak Show.
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking of Freak Show, the David Cross.
Same
show.
difference.
The first Comedy Central show I can think of with full and good animation was probably Ugly Americans.
Yeah,
it used the same studio that did the first season of Super Jail, which is why they were not on Super Jail after the first season, and they are amazing and probably overworked. But that was the first time I remember in the early 2010s, the first like full animation Comedy Central cartoon that looked like broadcast TV cartoons.
What about Drawn Together?
Oh boy,
no, thank you.
Drawn Together was not a great show, but they were told, no, you have to make it cheap, like Flash animation, and they fought really hard to do justice to the things they were parodying to the animation industry.
Was that
they
film?
got it like hand drawn?
Was that Film Roman that did Drawn Together?
It might have been.
Okay,
I think so.
It looks like it.
I'm going to be wrong all this time on this podcast. I really apologize.
But yeah, so the Tick has such an interesting. It has lasted so much longer and in so many different iterations. Like of all its contemporaries, like Eek the Cat doesn't get a comeback, let alone two. But I guess let's start from the beginning with how the Tick came to be. The Nigh Invulnerable Superhero first appeared in 1986 when then high school student Ben Edlund got into the indie comic world and was drawing his own superhero. He was drawing other superheroes, and he made this side character who was just this blue, invulnerable guy who was stupid and crazy. And everybody loved him. He's like, well, shit, I should do this Tick thing. Though Ben Edlund is a huge perfectionist, and he produced 8 issues of the Tick in like 7 years. He was a slow artist.
That's when I got into this cartoon. I went to the comic book store and I was like, where are all the Tick issues? And it was just like one trade paperback of all of the Tick. Like, that's all the Tick there is?
That's it. And as he was coming up and in college and just doing the Tick for fun on the side, it was certainly not making him rich. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hits it big. And so a toy licensing company called Kisscom, based in New Jersey, said to themselves, well, this company found a gold mine in Ninja Turtles by just going to an indie comic creator and making their thing. Let's find another weird indie comic creator with a toyetic character and license it. And so that's how Kisscom got connected with Ben Edlund. And so it took about 4 years to roll it out. They worked with Sunbow, which we will talk about in a future episode, all on G.I. Joe. But as Bob said then, Sunbow is an animation production company originally just made to make commercials, and they were about making commercials for toys. And that was kind of what the Tick was supposed to be as well. Ben Edlund was partnered with a man named Richard Libman Smith, who was more experienced in show running an animated series. Edlund tried to keep as much of the spirit of the Tick as they could while getting rid of some of the darker or sexual themes that were in his For Adults comic book. It was sold to Fox, though Edlund got to keep the rights to the Tick. Which explains why you get to see more Tick later and that they don't have to negotiate it with Fox. And that Ben Edlund said at the time that production took an extra year to do because he was being so meticulous. And also he saw that the way they were producing it would have looked like shit. And he's like, this would have looked like a bad 90s cartoon. Now I feel it looks like a bad 70s cartoon.
I'm kind of surprised that this was built around the idea of selling toys. I mean, the Tick existed before it was a way to sell toys, but I don't consider the Tick that kind of property. It's way too smart. It's way smarter than Ninja Turtles. That's so bizarre to me.
That was their mistake.
Yeah.
So they did have a run of toys in the first year. They weren't particularly great toys. And I think they didn't understand a difference between the Tick and the Turtles is that you can buy 4 of the Turtles and that's 4 toys a kid has to buy. But if you just want Tick, you buy Tick once. You're not buying El-Seed. You're probably not buying Arthur or American Made. You just want the Tick. And so it just wasn't a hit at all. They did one wave of toys and then they just gave up on it.
Wow. Yeah, I do remember the toys. I never had any of them, but I did see them in toy stores.
No, me neither. They didn't look like very functional toys.
I had an Arthur figure that was like, it was almost like, I think the company Applause might have made it because it feels like one of those small small figures, but it was like not an action figure at all. It's just a very tiny little in-action figure, but I would still like, I think his wings might have come off and I would still like fly him around the house.
Admiring his butt in the
Yeah.
No, it's
Rob Paulson isn't as good.
yeah. No, he's not.
He's not.
But he was just, he took a job. He's doing a job. But I mean, the style of it too, I love the style of it, but they don't make particularly great looking toys, I would think, especially in 3 dimensions.
They're like pudgy white guys. Like they're not a thing you want an action figure of, I guess.
It's also like, well, no, this is a joke. Though then I guess if you're looking at it from how they sold Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like Casey Jones is as much a joke as Deflator Mouse is.
Yeah, Ace Duck is no more cool than Sea Urchin.
It's true.
And those characters have like shit all over them. Like they've got weapons and belts and like their icon and sashes and stuff. And the Tick is just like flat blue and Arthur's just flat white.
Yeah, it's like electric colors in this show, like Sumbo. It's wild. So it premiered in September of 1994 on the same day as, or it appeared alongside the season 3 premiere of the X-Men animated series, a brand new episode of the last season of Batman the animated series on Fox, and the 3rd season premiere of Power Rangers as well.
Big day.
Though in that lineup, that a comedic, parodic, adult tone like Tick, it both stands out from it, but also makes no sense in its programming block.
It's funny, it aired in the 90s, in the mid-90s, for kids in the morning, but then Comedy Central just would put it on at 1:30 in the morning for stoners, and there was no, like, worry about the content. Like, oh, yeah, this was always a more sophisticated show.
And this is part of, like, a rash of, I think it might have started it, but a rash of, like, buying up cheap indie comic properties, like Savage Dragon, or these other things that you're like, that had a like when you like Wildcats had a cartoon, like all these weird properties that ran for one season. I always said that if Scud came out like a year earlier, I think it would have been one of these shows.
And it was still in development for a time, but as a movie after these shows died.
That's right.
Yeah, it never happened.
And it kind of blew my mind. I only found out about this through a podcast maybe 5 years ago, that the bad 90s movie Mystery Men is based, it's part of the Flaming Carrot universe.
Flaming Carrot. It's all the side characters. It's everyone except the main character.
They really buried that connection.
Well, they've needed to, in 97, they're like, we don't want people to know this is from a comic book. We want to sell this.
Get Smash Mouth on the line.
And what I love about the show then and now is that it's a love letter to old comics about both how silly it is and also how, what if real people were the superheroes? Well, they would be cowardly and suck. And what I love about Tick in that world is that he's kind of viewed as insane because he takes it seriously. He's the only one who's like, no, I'm a superhero. I do good. And other people are like, no, you're supposed to be crazy or you're supposed to cash in on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about the Venture Brothers connection now, but or soon rather. But I feel that's all I could think about while I was watching this for obvious reasons, because you have the mix of the absurdist characters and their superhero antics, and also the mundanity of going to a therapist or drinking in a depressing bar. It's like putting those two things against each other is very Venture Brothers-y, and it's very Ticky.
Yes.
Venture Brothers is a show about being in a union. Like that's like the main thing about it, is about like workers' rights.
Which is funny because it's a non-union show. That's why he's Jackson Public on the show, not Chris McCullough.
That's right. And the one episode that we did was like emblematic of that tone, in which on the episode that we did on the Venture Brothers, in which it's crazy adventure that we see bits of, and also Dr. Venture fucking around in his lab and making bets with his loser friends. It's the pairing of the mundane and the fantastic.
And they were very specific on this show of the comics they were parroting, in some cases too specific, because on the DVD releases of seasons 1 and 2, only in America, they don't have 2 episodes. In season 1, they deleted Tick versus the Mole Men because Marvel's like, no, we own the rights to Mole Man. You can't do this. And, but I think it was really just the distributor being like, we're kind of scared. We don't think Marvel would win this court case, but we'd rather not be sued. And then in the second season, one of their greatest episodes ever called Alone Together is him with Galactus. And it's so obviously Galactus, but
That's not on the DVD. That's
It's
like
not.
that's like the bet. When you said the Tick, that's the first episode I thought of when he's like looking at the Earth. Because I always the first line I think of the Tick is always "I am blue like the Earth," except for the green parts.
And then he just got Galactus to take a bite out of the moon instead of eating Earth. Like,
And it stays there. You see that, and you see Chairface
Shaw.
Chippendale's signature like all the time.
Chairface, boy. So revisiting this as an old man now, I realize all of the comic book stuff went right over my head because I was not reading Western comics. I wouldn't start reading manga for like a few years from the premiere, but now
Where's Luffy?
Yeah, where's Luffy? He doesn't exist yet, Bob. But yeah, now I get all of the comic book stuff, not as well as Henry, of course. But now I really see what they're going for with the characters that we see, like Big Shot and Agrippa and everybody else in the show. Like, oh yeah, that is Galactus. I know what a Galactus is now, thanks to movies.
and the cast was a mix of 90s voiceover stars and then some really weird famous people that they got, because in the regular VO cast, Tick is played by Townsend Coleman, who
He's so great.
he is amazing in this. I
a
was like,
classic.
man, I don't recognize this voice like I recognize every other voice in it. And that's because his most famous character is Michelangelo, which is a completely different voice than Tick.
He is Michelangelo. Wow. Okay, he gets the Tick so well. I was so impressed by his performance revisiting this show.
And also Cam Clark, a regular as well, aka Leonardo. We got Jess Harnell as Sea Urchin.
Yeah,
and
again,
many others.
as Matthew pointed out, doing the Dustin Hoffman Rain Man voice, but I will say it's a fun voice. They're not doing that character, which is good, but it's sort of the that era's equivalent of "Which way did he go, George? Which
Yes.
way did he go?"
Yeah, there's a whole Animaniacs character based around it. There's a
Yeah. It's
bunch
the same
of, I didn't
voice.
realize that was Jess Harnell. Jess Harnell, Wacko Warner.
Yes,
Yep.
that's his most famous. And then also, speaking of the Warners, Rob Paulson is a regular voice on the show who eventually became Arthur in season 2 and 3.
I
Probably
prefer
cheaper.
Oh,
Or-
definitely cheaper.
I'm sure Mickey Dolenz wasn't like suddenly busy.
No, but he is a weirdo. Well,
I love his performance as Arthur. It's so great. It's
Yes.
such a
It's
So good
unique.
because it's so like natural and human. It's not a cartoony performance. I think the same thing about the Tick's performance. He's doing that like, aha, like I am the Tick, but he's also like just talks like a dude sometimes. And I think that that's what sets the show apart. It feels so like this whole episode is just a bunch of dudes hanging out in a bar and they all sound like regular people. It works so well.
yeah, and it's fun to hear guys like Cam Clark getting to do more naturalistic voices instead of the bigger stuff he's asked to do.
Wow, so we have Leonardo and Michelangelo on
Yep.
the same cartoon, and Raphael.
And Raphael,
Holy
yeah.
God!
It reminds me of like early Adult Swim when you'd be like nothing, no cartoon ever sounded like Dana Snyder or any of these guys.
Oh, yeah.
God, I wish I was born with a cartoon voice like Dana Snyder.
But yeah, so there in the weird famous people section, there's the previously mentioned Mickey Dolenz, who played Arthur all of season 1. He is the drummer for the Monkees, in case you didn't know that. He is a fun weirdo. He had a really good guest appearance on the last season of Difficult People. I really like that a lot. And also included Bobcat Goldthwait, Lorraine Newman, Paul Williams, and the Belushi, Jim Belushi.
Who did he play?
Boy, that one I'm not sure.
I'm
on.
sorry.
Yeah,
Jim Belushi is a very good voice actor. He played a character on Hey Arnold that was like one of the first cartoon characters that made me like feel feelings. That made me be like, wow, like I really like felt for that sad gym teacher.
Oh yeah, he was really good at that. He's like, look, I just want to be a gym teacher. It's why you
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
give
Despite
me-"
his many blues crimes, I think he's
I
a
mean,
fine voice
fuck him
actor.
in a bunch of different ways, but like his voice acting and Twin Peaks makes him like I think he's lived up not quite to his brother, but like he's a little bit out of the shadow now after 40 years.
David Cross commits quite a lot of his book to about how he's the biggest asshole in the world, the Belushi is. But in Tick versus Education, he plays Mr. Fleener in that. So
Mr. Fleener, interesting.
it was quite a hodgepodge of characters, which I really think that too feels so ahead of its time, and also very Venture Brothers-y. Venture Brothers is about getting weird, somewhat famous people to voice a person you wouldn't expect,
Getting Stephen
Including
Colbert.
the Tick.
including the Tick.
Second Tick.
Yes, yeah. Well, we'll get to him.
Oh yeah.
Not just in the voice cast, but also on the writing staff were many big time names, including future showrunners of the Late Night with David Letterman, a future showrunner of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, that's the CGI one, and of course Jackson Public, aka Chris McCullough, as he's credited on here.
When they were probably in their, I'm guessing, late 20s, mid to late 20s?
He was in early 20s, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, he's. I was thinking about this. I was watching a Comic-Con interview with him because I was watching the Venture Brothers premiere, and I was like, "Hey, he's starting to like age a little bit." And I was like, "Oh yeah, they've been making the show for almost 20 years." And he was like a really young guy to run a show at the time, and now he's like a middle-aged TV writer.
I forget
man.
that they're almost 50, or I think not Jackson Public, but Doc Hammer. I think he is 50.
Well, and
That's a crime.
Well, and a secret of why Venture Brothers is so similar to The Tick is because Chris McCullough and Doc Hammer are best friends with Ben Edlund, and they worked with him a ton. Ben Edlund, after The Tick, he helped Doc Hammer and his then wife with making independent films, and he gave Chris McCullough his first job. Even before hiring him on The Tick, he hired Chris, aka Jackson Public, to do a spin-off Tick comic book when he was real
right.
young.
And Ben wrote some Venture Brothers episodes, correct?
He wrote Viva Los Muertos.
That's like the first one.
The second one, the one where the one with the fire bad venture zombie.
Okay.
And he wrote that one. He's the only person other than Jackson Public and Doc Hammer to have written a Venture Brothers episode because they just trust him that much. And I think Jackson Public learned a lot of his meticulous and controlling reasons on Venture Brothers from Ben Edlund.
We get 8 episodes every 3 years.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, even The Tick was not a prolific show. They made 36 episodes in 3 years, 13 episodes a season.
Ooh, maybe we could do a miniseries on the first season. You never know.
Maybe. Let's see what the response to this one.
Have I ever told my meeting Jackson Public story on this show?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, I met Jackson and Doc when I was like 19, when season 3 was about to premiere of Venture Brothers. I was at New York Comic Con and I knew they were going to be there, and I was going to their panel. Actually, no, I didn't see their. Oh, this was after season 2 premiered because I went to the panel the next year. So I was walking along the floor and I saw the backs of their heads, which is like they are the two most seeable people in the world because they're both like 6 feet tall. And Doc has that hair thing where his hair naturally is 2 different colors, and they were wearing the exact same suit. They were dressed like basically like the prisoner. They were wearing like the prisoner suits.
Wow.
I see them and they're way across the floor, and I'm talking to my friend Pete, and I'm in the middle of a sentence and I just stop talking and run away. Which is how he told the story. He was like, I thought like your dad, because my dad was with us. He was like, I thought something happened to your dad. And they got on an escalator and a bunch of people get behind them, and I got on the escalator. So I'm just standing on the escalator like 10 feet behind them, just like bouncing up and down. And I run up to them and I'm like, excuse me. And they both turn around and I don't say anything. and then they both look at me, and then Jackson goes, yes. And I was like, oh, sorry. You're Jackson Public and you're Doc Hammer. And then I don't say anything again, and they both just stare at me. And then he goes, yeah, we are. And then I was like, sorry. And then I gave them my sketchbook and I was like, would you mind signing this? And then Jackson drew Brock in my sketchbook.
Wow.
And he signed it. And then under where it says Jackson Public, Doc wrote loves Doc Hammer. He's still somewhere. I still have that.
Okay, I was going to say you should tweet that out. I want to retweet that for people that are listening to this.
That's amazing.
And they were super. They talked to me for like a few minutes, and they were nice guys. And I think at that point that show was still very small. But I was like I saw the pilot when it premiered, and I've watched it, and I was like in between season 1 and 2. I was like on the Adult Swim message boards, and I love this show. And they were like, thank you so much. I don't think they heard that often yet, and now they're huge superstars.
That reminds me of seeing Jackson Public, a clip of him from his San Diego Comic-Con appearance this year to promote the next season that's finally coming out. And somebody says like, so it really takes a while. I mean, have you guys looked into like project managers or something? And then one of the voice actors on stage just laughs in Jackson's face, like, this person's saying you suck at doing your job. And then Jackson Public's like, okay, look, we work really hard on this, but the reason is that we insist on writing every episode and I insist on directing every episode, and I can't write and direct at the same time. So we write a season, then I direct a season, then I write a season.
I think they're kind of lucky they don't get the crazy 100-episode Rick and Morty orders.
The show would be, Venture Brothers would be a very different show if they had that kind of
It's
order.
like, just make 10. We'll see you in 3 years.
Well, so The Tick, the episodes were basically critical hits and did all right in the ratings, but the toys weren't selling, which basically sealed its doom right then because it was made to sell toys. Kisscom didn't really care that adults watched it. There were even, it had an 11:30 time slot, which is as late as it gets on Saturday morning, which is them recognizing this, adults watch this, not kids.
That's
Kids
when I
are at
was
soccer practice by then.
Yeah, exactly. Or like some kind of weird Saturday church. But I will say, yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't know if it makes any sense though, because I was like, oh, this is on late in the morning, so they can get away with more. But I was like, that doesn't make any sense. People aren't going back to bed at 11 o'clock in the morning.
And but they did get 2 more 13 episode season orders, and one of the weirdest things was the 3rd season, which like Fox barely aired. Like I
don't think I saw it until Comedy Central.
I remember trying to watch the 3rd season, like, oh, is an episode up today? Like, and in the 3rd season, they actually had a joke ad. I remember where they're just like, parents are super excited. The Tick is back. It's like, is this a passive aggressive ad about how children don't watch this?
We made the show for children.
So the series ended officially in 1997. In fact, the 3rd season, 2 episodes never aired on Fox.
Wow.
They didn't air until the Comedy Central repackaging.
I had no idea.
The Comedy Central repackaging did so well that Ben Edlund, who had been kind of kicking around and doing some stuff after that, he was able to sell the show as a live action show to Fox back when Fox was in the interest of like doing, oh, we'll do 13 episodes of anything and then we'll stop it and we'll never do more.
Never again.
And so they did the live action Tick starring Patrick Warburton in the role of the Tick.
And Jackson Public worked on that show as well, right?
Yep.
That's how he got to know Patrick Warburton and was like, I need to make you a character.
That's why he's Brock Sampson. You can't land Patrick Warburton on most rinky-dink Adult Swim shows, but I think he gets friend prices.
If it's 2003, maybe.
And now he's just locked in. He's still doing it. They haven't killed off. I'm still waiting for the year when they kill off Brock. Like, they definitely wrote out Brock to be in fewer episodes for Patrick Warburton's time.
He was gone for like almost a whole season, but this,
Yes.
I mean, I've seen the first 2 episodes of the season, and it looks like he's pretty much in more of a season 1 capacity again.
Good.
Well, that's what I loved about the last 8 fucking episode season of the show, where they're like, "Oh, we're just rebooting and going back to and Brock is their guard again. Like, we're done with this OSI bullshit." Though they're not really done with it. But
I was a big fan of that live action Fox Tick. I
didn't
actually
give it a
watched
chance.
it like maybe like 5 years ago. They put it on Netflix, and I think it holds up. I think it's pretty funny. I think all the performances are great. The changes they have to make for legal reasons, like American Made becomes like I think Lady Liberty, and Deflator Mouse becomes Batman. So it's I think it's funny, and Pat Warburton is fucking amazing on it.
I think I was at my most pedantic and insufferable right out of high school, so I didn't watch it because of the changes.
Yeah. Which had to happen because Ben Edlund owns the rights to the Tick characters, but the ones that debuted in his comic, if they were created for the animated series, then he doesn't own that, and they'd have to license it separately from a deal with Ben Edlund. So they could either do that or just make up a different Batman character.
I mean, Batman is kind of a better name for the character because it wasn't until I was watching it as a elder teen, early 20s person that I got what Deflator Mouse is and what it is a reference to in opera.
My mom explained it to
Mouse,
me.
yeah.
I was lucky in that way. My mom loved the Tick. Elseed was one of her favorite characters of all time. I remember she bought an Elseed toy just to be on her desk at work.
And that's a reference too, right?
Yes.
To something.
Yes.
Just assume they all are.
But so Ben Edlund had a 1 season wonder on that, and then would work with Joss Whedon on Firefly, also for just 1 season. Though he wrote some of the best episodes of Firefly, including Janestown. Town, which
Yeah.
unfortunately I can't really watch that now because Adam Baldwin is central to that and he's an online terrorist. So, that sucks.
And Joss Whedon, the patriarchy made him cheat on his wife.
I know. It was so mean of the patriarchy to do that and make
I can't watch it because I feel bad for him. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, it's so sad. The patriarchy made him film all those women barefoot.
It made him do all those weird casting couch things.
God, there's so many foot weirdos in Hollywood. Let's calm it down with the feet, everybody.
One more now.
But Joss Whedon stayed buddies with Ben Edlund because after Firefly, Ben Edlund joined the writing staff of Angel, where he also wrote some of the best episodes of that. He wrote the puppet episode of Angel.
Really? Okay.
That's when Angel was at its best. Season 5. I think Angel the last season is one of the best seasons of TV ever. I love the end of that show.
And in case it wasn't obvious, but Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog had Ben Edlund's involvement too, since it's really just also The Tick. And then Ben Edlund pretty much just became a staff writer on shit in Hollywood. He worked on as a producer on Supernatural, on The Clone Wars, on Gotham and Venture Brothers, until 2016, where he again, I think on the surprise popularity of streaming the old canceled live action series, he pitches to Amazon a new live action Tick series starring Peter Serafinowicz as the Tick. And I also haven't watched that.
I haven't watched it either. Didn't they
I've
make
heard good things.
They made a pilot and they're like, hey, watch the pilot. We might make more of these. And then they did. And then I totally missed it.
Amazon did they put a bunch of pilots out and had people vote. And I watched the pilot then and I voted for it. I watched season 1 and I watched like a couple episodes of season 2. I haven't finished it yet, but it's good. The first season is pretty good. The pilot's great. The second season, I kind of bounced off of it, but I will go back to it at a certain point. Griffin Newman, who hosts the podcast Blank Check, he's Arthur on it, and he's fantastic.
wow.
He's like the heart of the show. He and Peter Serafinowicz are both wonderful on it.
The problem with a lot of those streaming exclusive series, though, I find, is that they all look, a lot of them look very, very cheap. Like,
it doesn't look great, and there's like a few different sets, and you kind of lose some of the Tick magic in that way because there aren't a bunch of crazy, weird-looking, colorful characters. There are just like a few base characters.
Yeah, but I mean that's what you deal with when you're dealing with a lower budget. I mean, his budget lowers every time he does it, and
it's kind of playing on the look of modern comic book movies, which is bad. So like it's like when it makes fun of that with like the texturing on his suit and the dark and grimy like browns and grays and stuff everywhere. It's one of those things of like, all right, I see you're making fun of it, but I still don't. I'm not going to enjoy you being worse at it.
That's why I like how flexible of a parody the Tick is, that he could work for making fun of the like 90s comic boom in the original animated series. He could mock the like early 2000s, late 90s Matrix bullshit in the other Tick live action show. And then in this one, he's like, well, MCU, man, it's as big as it gets. Like, let's make fun of how lame those look. I like that Ben Edlund has stayed like plugged in on that stuff too, and how involved he stayed with it. This is kind of out of print right now. You can still buy the DVDs, but like it's not streaming anywhere. I think because there's like probably a bunch of licensing bullshit involved with it.
Yeah, I mean, type the Tick into Google and it'll take you where you need to go. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. That's where I watched it.
It's not hard to find. It's one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's all on YouTube. Who cares?
Last thing I'll say about this show in general, I just loved it because there's a lot of stuff in it that's dated, but I loved that it had an affection for the comic books that I loved as a kid, but also could make fun of it in the pedantic ways I, as a kid, would also say like, well, why doesn't the guy just do that? And also
here's why, you little shit.
And it made me feel like a smart little boy because I got all of the references too.
Yeah,
I like that it's like 90s boom, but it's also very much, you can tell Ben Edlund grew up with like 60s and 70s comics, and it's also making fun of that real hard.
What a show. And for free, make way for America's newest hero. It is I, the Tick, when the chips are down.
Are you all right?
I'm fine. I'm a superhero. And darkness reigns. Stop your evil ways. No one can lick the Tick. Not so fast, naughty spawn. Incredible excitement is coming your way. Hello. Don't miss The Tick. Coming up next on Fox Kids.
Spoon listeners, welcome to the break. It's Henry here.
Hey, it's Bob, and I'm nigh podcastable, if that makes sense.
And welcome to the break of The Tick. We thanks all y'all for listening. We're having a great time going back to 1994 in The Tick here. I had forgotten how much I like this show.
Yeah, I forgot how smart it was. I mean, it did air on Comedy Central at night, and they thought it was appropriate. And going back to it, I was like, yeah, this is just like the Venture Brothers, and I'm digging it.
Yeah, and we hope that you guys are digging it. And if you'd like to hear this, though, without any ads on it, and also to hear next week's episode, there's a place you can go, gentle listener.
That's right. If you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you can find out all of the extra stuff we're doing on the side, but you also get every episode of What a Cartoon a week ahead of time and ad-free, and the same goes for Talking Simpsons. And if you sign up at the $5 level, you can listen to our episode about One Punch Man's episode, The Lone Cyborg, right now. But there's also all kinds of things happening there, like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, so many interviews, so many behind-the-scenes specials, so many season wrap-ups. All of our live shows are there. We just put up a new one just the other day. There's so much going on there. If you sign up right now, you will get a code. You drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and it will download them as you listen to all of your regular podcasts. It works with iTunes. It works with everything. And if you sign up now, there's probably, I don't know, like 100 things you've never heard us do before. So that's a lot of content.
So much content, and it's all great. And easily, I think we really give people their $5 worth there.
Yeah, I swear to God, there's at least one extra thing a week that if you're not on the Patreon, you're not hearing it.
You know, we only do What a Cartoon because we hit a goal on our Patreon, and we've got other goals we'd like to hit too. If you'd like to hear us do another mini-series of a different animated series after Futurama this year, we just need a little bit more money and we'll hit that goal.
Yeah, that's I believe our $11,000 goal, and we're very, very close. We may hit that this or next month, so hopefully we'll do another exclusive mini-series to go along with Talking Futurama for this year.
Yeah, so go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. As long as I'm throwing out URLs, you can also go to tiny.cc/TSHulu. What will you find there? A 30-day free trial of Hulu, and a little bit of money gets kicked back to us if you sign up for it.
So yeah, thank you for listening. Again, check out patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and we'll let you get back to the Tick's episode, The Tick versus the Tick.
The Tick is at Taco Bell. When you buy a new Taco Bell Kids meal, you can get one of 14 Tick collectibles while supplies last.
The Tick and Arthur battle the evil Drakazog. All in a day's work for a superhero.
One free with each kids meal at a participating Taco Bell.
Life's a trip when you're the Tick.
Right on!
He's one suave superhero who can slide into any situation.
I feel monkey funky.
So what's the trick that makes the Tick hip?
No one knows.
Catch the Tick this Saturday on Fox Kids.
All right, so this episode from the first season, The Tick versus the Tick, I picked this one because it is one of the most Venture Brothers-y of them.
For sure.
And also, it stars Jim Cummings, and he's great, the greatest, one of the best guest stars they ever had, I'd say, even though it's Jim Cummings, who he's just, if you animated something, he's there. It's hard to call him a guest star.
He was at the height of his powers in 1994, I think.
It made me think of the Don Hex episode of Venture Brothers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it reminds me of the Bot Seeking Bot episode of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, this episode was written by Ben and Richard. So the two showrunners wrote this one. It was directed by Art Vitello, who worked on shows like Tiny Toons, Tasmania, Gummy Bears, and Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters.
I think he popped up on Darkwing Duck too.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
Though he either died or retired or some. I don't know, but he has no credits on IMDb after like 1997.
He's doped up or dying or something.
You knew my cadence. You
My
knew
brains.
and this episode was the animation production was done by ACOM, the Korean animation studio that worked on a million shows.
It looks very ACOM-y. It's not bad. That's what I'll say.
It's not
Yeah,
bad.
it looks pretty good. I don't think it looks. I think that the designs and the models bring it a lot further than the animation does, but it looks pretty good.
ACOM was like the B studio for early Batman and Tiny Toons episodes. They weren't quite Kennedy bad, but the ACOM episodes of Tiny Toons weren't always my favorite either.
And
There's a lot of, it's very strongly like boarded and keyframed. So
Yeah.
like keep, there's not a ton of motion, but it's usually strong, very comic booky shots.
Revisiting this, having learned a lot more about animation, I noticed they didn't really simplify the characters from their comic book appearances. So there's a lot of pencil mileage, a lot of lines floating around that they need to like lock down before everything becomes a blurry mess. But
I was thinking that too as I
Yeah.
watched it. They're very complicated designs.
especially the tick, like
Yeah.
someone had to keep drawing all those ticks.
All those bumpy things under his like rib, under his pecs, it's like that rib area. It's like,
Yeah, like-
you don't need to draw all that.
Draw every muscle.
Batman is just a slab of gray. Like he doesn't have all those bones there.
Yeah, it's very like he's very anatomical in a way that you don't see. You didn't see much then and don't see now in cartoons. Where like now abs on a lot of cartoons, just for the sake of like they don't have the processing power behind it with that many people animating it. It'll just be like a crosshatch on their stomach. Like
Yeah.
no, Tick's got like molded abs.
They usually abstract it now. You're right.
And I also wanted to do this one because it had just recently come up in an interview with Jackson Public. Because this was a rather internally at Fox controversial episode because of the Midnight Bomber, What Bombs at Midnight. In an interview about the new art book for Venture Brothers that just got put out by Dark Horse, which I cannot wait to read.
Our pal Maddie has it, and she was posting pictures, and I really want it.
Yeah, it looks amazing. There's a thread on a forum that I read, and people were just talking about it, and I was like salivating. Like we were talking about how like you could murder someone with it. It's that. There's a reason it took like 6 years to put out.
I pre-ordered it 5 years ago.
Those are like the art books they make for anime with interviews and designs. Oh, it looks so good.
But so Jackson Public was doing an interview with IO9, and the interviewer told him, like, there's some stuff you did in early Venture Brothers you couldn't do now, like on the Tick. In the Tick versus the Tick, you couldn't do that bomber stuff now. And then Jackson Public replied, quote, "No, we could barely do him then. I think when we were making the cartoon, we weren't even allowed to bring him back at some point. Yeah, I think he was just a background character making a joke. He certainly wasn't talking about his bombs, you know?"
What was the fear of, like, bombs are one of the stock cartoon violence devices. I don't really
Yeah.
understand it. And the bombs in this are giant things that have the word bomb on them.
Well, in the current day,
I'm talking about 1994, though.
yeah, I mean, I would guess after Timothy McVeigh was 96, but
Yeah.
What was Unabomber?
Oh,
Was he later?
Unabomber. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Unabomber was he was doing stuff in
people
94.
were blowing each other up with bombs since bombs were created, but
Yeah.
I guess
But kids
maybe
can't imitate that.
World
though.
Trade Center 1 bombing?
Yeah, that was 93.
Yeah.
I think really it was one of those things. There's multiple things in the first season of The Tick that you're like, well, you get away with this now because it's your first season, but once you do it, the same thing happened to Batman. Batman in his first run episodes got away with stuff that then once the censors saw it, they're like, oh, wait, we should have told you couldn't do
Yeah,
that.
it's too expensive to correct, so just don't do it next time.
Yes, yeah. And so I had forgotten that this first season, I think it's because some episodes ran short that they just have interchangeable interview segments that kind of pad out the first part of it.
I was going to ask, what is this cold open and how is it connected to anything that happens in the show? Are they just like, are these recurring, these interview segments?
Multiple episodes.
I don't
started
remember
with this.
them.
They
yeah.
just
No
kind of
background needed.
Yeah, they're nice and cheap. Well, they just happen outside of the
Yeah.
reality of it. And I really think it was like, oh, we under animated this episode. This episode ran short. Let's just put one of those interview clips at the start.
Or maybe they're being ambitious and thinking of syndication future and that they could snip that scene out and they could just preserve the rest of the show without it making
It's
cuts.
true.
But they only got 36, not 65 or 100.
It also reminds me of the later episode of The Tick that was the Cops parody.
Oh, every cartoon did that. every cartoon.
But I love their one because both Tick and the villain he's facing, Pigleg, they both speak to the camera to be like, and this is the denouement, which is the final confrontation. It's how I learned the term denouement as a kid. This interview is so great. I have both parts of it here. Let's hear the first half of it.
Once again, we're here with prominent superheroes, the Tick and Arthur.
Good morning, America.
Hi. Now, Tick, many questions about you remain unanswered.
I am a man of mystery.
Yes. But can you tell me, what do you do?
Eh?
I mean, what are your superhuman powers? Can you see through steel? You know, with X-rays. Can you bend iron bars with your mind?
Well, no.
Can you create energy-based multiples of yourself?
Whoa, no.
Can you make diamonds out of coal?
No.
Shoot heat beams out of your eyes?
No.
Breathe atomic fire?
No.
Well then, can you destroy the Earth?
Egad, I hope not. That's where I keep all my stuff.
Yes, of course it is.
So he's being interviewed by Liquid Snake.
Yes.
Brother! That's Cam Clark with a British accent, a.k.a. Liquid Snake.
The interview frames the show the way it should be, which is that everyone else around it wants to deconstruct superheroes, and the Tick refuses to be deconstructed. He's like, I don't know. No, I have no answers for this. I'm the Tick.
He's kind of shocked by all of these superhero powers that are being thrown at him.
Yeah, well, as something as a comic book fan that you need to know where the Tick came out of, he was coming out in the post-Alan Moore Watchmen world, which Alan Moore's entire thing, which he is the greatest in comic book history at this, is pure deconstruction of saying like, well, if you were a professional superhero, you're probably an insane person who like murders children, right? The Tick is fighting all of that with all of his being of like, no, I'm just a superhero. You can't ask me what I am. Another of my favorite Tick things in the first season was when Tick makes a bat signal for himself. And when he gives it to the mayor's like, I got like 80 of these and nobody answers them. I don't need this.
That's great.
But yes, the interview continues.
Tell me, do you have a girlfriend?
I am mighty! I have a glow you cannot see. I'm a heart as big as the moon, as warm as bathwater. We're superheroes, man. We don't have time to be charming. The boots of evil were made for walking. We're watching the big picture, friend. We know the score. We are a public service, not glamour boys. Yeah, not captains of industry, not makers of things. Keep your vulgar monies. We are a justice sandwich. No toppings necessary. Living rooms of America. Do you catch my drift? Do you dig?
I can fly.
I like how being asked if he has a girlfriend is what the catalyst is for this crazy rant. I have a glow.
He's got no time. He gets really pissed off when Arthur goes on a date in a future episode too. He's just like, superheroes don't have girlfriends. It's not what you do.
That's another thing that gives it that like 90s indie comic feel is the like 60s jazz track. That was all over like cool indie cartoons. Like if you watch a bunch of MTV cartoons or whatever, like you'll see that stuff all the time.
I guess we didn't talk. I mean, Matthew brought it up briefly, but the opening song is nuts.
It's wild.
It's a real like shake you by your shoulders if you're watching TV at 11:30 a.m. Just like what?
It's like a throwback to that like Spider-Man. Like it's like doing the 60s thing, but also like ridiculously crazy and over the top. It feels like a kid singing that song.
I always laugh at the awesome just like scat breakdown that happens in the middle of that song.
Yeah. That's all by Doug Costaros is the composer's name who they got. He was really great. When I looked at his career, he's mainly like he's composed some, but he's mainly like a studio musician for tons of bands. Like his biggest claim to fame on his wiki page, other than the Tick, is that he is a consistent studio musician for Kiss. Like, particularly a favorite of Paul Stanley.
I'm sure it pays well.
He's what's that documentary? Hired Guns or whatever.
Oh
about,
yes,
like, studio guys.
The
Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, the Wrecking Crew. That was
Yeah,
it. Yeah. And I just also love Tick's pronouncement of like, I am mighty. That's all you need to know. And his superpower too, which you see tons of great clips of it in the opening, is just he's indestructible. Like that's a Tick. Like he can be knocked unconscious, but like nothing can hurt him. He's
nigh invulnerable.
He's not invulnerable when he's blasting.
I'm off the show now. I've been jinxed.
No, I'm sorry. And I also like that Arthur's just trying to be helpful, and I like too on the show in the opening, in the pilot episode, that Arthur is never out of costume from that point on, and he's just going to work in his costume, and his coworkers are like, have you lost your mind? It's like
he's an accountant, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
And he's just spending through his savings to be a sidekick the entire time. And then we come back into the episode as it starts proper. It is such a Venture Brothers scenes of 4 superheroes in a car trying to merge onto the highway.
4 losers.
All losers. That Arthur is the least loser of them all, too.
But again, like, this is a kid's show, and the first joke is the terror of trying to merge.
Mm-hmm. Which would be a pain that I wouldn't know for another like 5 years as a child.
Not relatable to me at age 12.
No, but I did like that Arthur becomes like a dad, which it's also a speech Doc Venture has given to, like, I'm going to turn this around and there's no party for anybody. Just, yeah, Mickey Dolenz in this whole scene here is just, I love him.
What are you trying to do? Get us creamed?
Listen, Deflator Mouse. It wasn't my idea to go to some crazy superhero nightclub in the middle of nowhere. And it certainly wasn't my idea to borrow my sister's car to get there.
Oh, but it'll be worth it, Arthur. Think of it, a whole club just for superheroes, packed wall to wall with crime fighters on their night off. Oh, the camaraderie.
Oh, P.U. Can someone open a window around here? Sewer urchin really stinks. You're stinking on purpose, aren't you?
His stink powers.
Those will come in handy later. Deflator Mouse as the craven and conceited Batman is so good. He's so funny. And that he's stuck in the backseat, which, like, why doesn't he have a Batmobile? Why are they having to borrow Arthur's car?
Why are they all Arthur's sister's car?
Yes, yeah.
Is Arthur's sister a character on the show?
Later she would be, yes.
Yeah.
She comes to visit one time and she kind of is like, actually you could almost read it that she's like, oh, so you've moved in with the Tick, huh? This is weird. And he's like, no, we're just superheroes. Come on. And
on the new show, their relationship is like the core of the show.
Oh, really? Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's Griffin Newman's talked about how I forget if it was him or the sister. One of them was cast already, and the other one, and they did like their audition together. Like one of them came in and like helped the other person do their audition, and they were cast because of their chemistry. They said they felt like a real brother and sister, even though they'd never met before.
In the first season, they kind of drop it a little in the later seasons, but in the first season, they really have a handle on Arthur's money problems, and part of that is borrowing your sister's car. And then we also get to meet this episode, one of this episode's villains, the Midnight Bomber, what bombs at midnight.
And so he says to me, you want to be a bad guy? And I say, yeah, baby, I want to be bad. I says, sure, some space ponies. I'm making gravy without the lumps.
It's very much the 90s sort of monkey cheese random humor, but it was good. It was a good vintage for that time.
His down with government speeches at least make a little sense.
Yeah.
They're not just all. But in general, I like what a nutty, paranoid guy he is. He kind of feels a little Hunter S. Thompson-y to me, of the constant talking to himself, though it's not really doing the Hunter voice.
Yeah, is that Rob Paulson doing this voice?
According to the credits, it's Maurice LaMarche just turned way up. But I don't know. It really doesn't sound like it.
It really doesn't. It's weird.
I mean, we hear plain old Maurice LaMarche in this next scene.
You must be the doorman.
Yes, but men call me Jim. IDs, please.
Okay.
Wait a sec. I may have left it in my other tights.
Oh, I get it. Spelling America with a K, are we?
Oh, we're being carded. We're definitely being carded.
That's not the best picture of me. It was a bad ear day.
I'll say. The Tick?
And tingling for fun.
This should be interesting. Okay.
I thought that was a really edgy joke for a kid's cartoon. Spelling America with a K, are we?
Yes, yeah.
Just like...
It also, the Tick is normally just an apolitical guy, but he's basically saying like, oh, I didn't know I came to Russia. Are you commies checking all my papers?
I'm sure I didn't get that joke as a kid at all.
Certainly not. No, me neither. It's kind of inspired by a book series that I think was made into a television movie as well. America with a K in it. America.
Okay, and this episode is based on a comic, an individual comic adventure.
Okay.
I don't know. There are some changes to it, but this is one of the few that's
Just
actually
pulled right
based
from the page. Okay.
Right from the page.
I
Yeah.
did not know that. Well, and also I like that when they meet the doorman, the Tick seems to think his name as a superhero is Doorman. But he's like, no, I'm Jim.
Men call me Jim.
Yeah. Though nobody says bad hair day anymore. When he says bad ear day, I was like, oh yeah, that was a 90s thing saying like, I'm having a bad hair day.
It was a good go-to if you needed some joke filler.
Yeah.
It's a great album.
It is a great album, yeah.
And also that's when Arthur is denied entrance into it. And I wondered why. I wonder if it was a legal note that Doorman says, my doorman senses are ringing, not tingling, which is the Spider-Man saying.
I think it's a clever twist because door ringing,
right.
Yeah.
And poor Arthur, he doesn't even get to have fun here. He gets sent to the sidekicks lounge. His disappointment is like, what? He can't believe it. Then we get the return of one of the pilot characters, Big Shot, which his appearance in the first episode, Tick vs. the Idea Man, is so great because he's simply the Punisher, except even with more guns, and he just appears and shoots this entire chimney to bits, and then just starts crying because he's just so broken.
I forgot he was in the show before this, but I love him in this episode.
Hey, it's my favorite blue man.
Hey, Big Shot, my favorite emotionally unbalanced gun-toting vigilante.
Come on over. I want you to meet my new friends from Deertown. This is Mighty Agrippa, Roman god of the aqueduct.
Oh, well, sometimes.
And this is Jet Valkyrie, a woman. Cool. And this is Fish Boy, Lost Prince of Atlantis. Gang, I want you to meet the Tick. Oh, man.
Oh, Barry's not gonna like this.
No, Barry's not going to like this one bit.
Well, maybe he won't show up tonight.
It's great how they point out Jet Valkyrie's defining characteristic, a woman. Cool.
A woman.
Do we see him with guns in the other appearances he
Only
makes?
in the first one. I think that was another of their things like, well, you can't keep having this gun guy. You get one joke with him with guns, and every appearance after that is that he used to carry guns and no longer does.
I think he mentions the word guns, and he just almost breaks down in this episode.
Yes, yeah.
So he's a recovering gun addict.
I love Agrippa, too. Like, that's such a specific... It's like a Thor parody. It was just like, well, we got to get a much more obscure guy.
He's wearing an aqueduct on his head, a little mini aqueduct.
What can his powers be? Does he direct water? Is that part of his powers?
Who knows?
Also, I think it's funny that this show, making fun of Aquaman, was so popular in the 90s that this episode has Fish Boy and Sea Urchin. They're both parodies of how useless Aquaman is.
Did the Tick, maybe Matthew can weigh on this, did the Tick sort of invent making fun of Aquaman? Because I remember the Sean Baby website of the late 90s had a whole Aquaman sucks thing, a whole Aquaman sucks wing of the webpage, and that's where I really, for our generation, the Aquaman stuff started.
I always think
of
that State sketch where they're playing the Super Friends and Superman is he's like, Batman, go here, and Wonder Woman, go here, and he's like, Aquaman, go talk to some fish, and they all laugh at him.
I guess maybe it was just shared cultural wisdom that Aquaman sucked.
I think they were all just a bunch of people in their 20s were making TV now, and they all grew up in the 70s watching cartoons on TV.
Well, I mean, if you watch enough Super Friends, you come away hating Aquaman. You're just like, oh, none of his cartoons are fun. He's useless. I like the animation on Aquaman's concentric circles coming out. But
when I was growing up, I'd always be like, yeah, but every one of the Super Friends was lame. It was a weird, silly show. And then that's why I liked the Sean Baby ones, because he also pointed out, Superman is melted. The one I always think of is they're fighting a bunch of snow monsters, and Superman just melts 50 of them with his heat vision, and Batman takes 10 minutes to just rope one up and lift him off the ground.
I also remember in Sean Baby's comics, he had a great joke about how Superman would get tied up, and then he'd be just like, you're Superman, cut it with your eyes. You can do all this stuff.
Did they succeed in making Aquaman cool with the new stuff?
They're trying. They're trying.
I think they did it with Brave and the Bold when John DiMaggio played him.
He was a good Aquaman. I mean, well, so...
Outrageous.
If we may talk about Aquaman history here, from about 1989 forward, inside of DC, they recognized he was a joke. And so they constantly were trying to repackage him as serious. So in
They bit his hand off.
Yeah, that was the big one in my generation. When Superman died and Batman had his back broken, Aquaman lost his left hand, and so he just always had a hook on it. And he was written as a much like angrier, mad dude by Peter David in his long run.
He had like long hair and a big beard.
Yeah, he was not your dad's Aquaman. They got rid of his orange shirt too because they knew that was part of the joke.
And then eventually he got a magical water hand.
Yes, yeah. And then they killed him off, and then he came back as like a teen, a sexy teen Aquaman. And then they killed that Aquaman, and then he came back again with his hand intact. That was when Jeff Johns was like, no, I'm going to lean in on this stuff and make it about how people think Aquaman's a joke, but he's actually a great hero. And so that's pretty close to what they're doing. If you read Jeff Johns' run on Aquaman, it's real close to what they're doing or seeming to be doing based on the trailer in this Christmas's Aquaman film by James Wan starring Jason Momoa, which, hey, we'll see.
Yeah, but Aquaman gets it twice in this episode.
Yeah. I love Fish Boy that he's always drinking water and has on his like water wings. It's like, what a loser.
There was a joke a little while ago on Family Guy that was like the exact opposite of what I remember everyone saying on the internet for my entire life, which is they had Aquaman being the cool, useful one, and they were making fun of Namor next to him. And that blew my mind because I was like, no, everyone's always said Namor's the cool one. That's so weird to have the, like, we've totally switched in the culture. And also that anyone on a television show knows who Namor is.
That's confusing enough. Until I read an Evan Dorkin comic, I thought it was pronounced Submariner, not Submariner. Only it was Evan Dorkin comic. He pointed out that that's how dorks say it, and it's not the right way.
He's got little wings on his feet that make him fly.
That's how
Makes
you fly.
sense.
He was the first mutant Namor. But so anyway, I'm glad they didn't do a record scratch when they just pause and it gets quiet. In a lesser show, they'd have had a record scratch when they're like, ooh, you're the Tick? Uh-oh, Barry's not going to like this. And then Arthur goes to the Psychic Lounge, which is where he meets not one but two talking animals he's stuck between.
It's like Superdog and some ape, right?
Yeah, an orangutan, just like, I heard that. Also, Jim Cummings in another great role. We also get to see Deflator Mouse hit on a woman with a poodle gun, which I wish that joke just needed to be a little snappier. It was funny, but it was like, there's several jokes that are hurt just by the animation not being equal to the writing.
I think a lot of pacing gets lost in overseas animation in terms of what you need to sell a joke.
I agree.
It takes a while, but I do appreciate that they took the time to show you that the poodles get back into the gun because I was wondering that the whole time.
They're safe.
Yeah, I was like, are they just expendable? She lets them go, but no, that you see them get back in.
They're all her friends. Meanwhile, the Midnight Bomber is on his way.
He says to me, you got style, baby. If you're going to be a real villain, you got to get a gimmick. And so I says, yeah, baby, a gimmick, that's it. High explosives. Yeah? Keep playing with fire, superfans. You don't know how much fire you're playing with.
The rants are good.
Yeah, they're great rants. And that he also like turns on his windshield wipers because his car's on fire. I thought that was pretty funny too.
I like that they're not just nonsense. You can follow his logic as he's talking.
I think I was a little unfair to that first one.
It wasn't until I watched it this time, I was like, oh, the person he's talking to who's telling him these things is just him. It's a dissociative personality that he has there. Then Barry arrives, which, like, again, Jim Cummings rules in this episode. This is one of the most like unhinged characters he's probably ever played, and he does it with panache.
So, who is this Barry guy? Another superhero?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that, no. Well, he'd like people to think he is, but for all the wrong reasons.
You see, he's rich, and his brother-in-law owns the comic club, so he gets to come in whenever he wants and make trouble.
Yeah, but it's after 10, so he probably won't show up tonight. That's Barry.
Where's the jerk who calls himself the Dick?
I am that jerk. Who wants to know?
You stole my superhero name, Parasite. I am the Dick.
It's a little bit of Kirk Douglas, a little bit of Charlton Heston mixed together. I like it. I like it a lot.
And also just like breathing really hard too.
Yeah.
I love this episode too because it makes sense. Like, obviously in the world of DC, like they're not going to name another guy Batman because that would confuse the readers. But in the real world, what would stop there from being like 500 guys named Batman? He doesn't own the rights to that name.
I'm sure we've mentioned it before, but there's a very great Freakazoid cartoon in which the very John Cleese-like Lord Bravery is trying to register his name, and he's having a lot of problems because there are many other Lord Braveries.
That's such a great inside joke cartoon because it's really about how they're like, okay, then we'll name this character this, like, nope, the database says that already is a copyright. And so they made one of the many very inside moments from Freakazoid.
It's a great cartoon.
And there's a couple, like, there's a Captain Marvel in Marvel and in DC.
Now that's just he's just Shazam now, the DC Captain Marvel. They just gave up. They're like, yeah, we can't. Because Marvel was very smart to when the Captain Marvel name fell in the 60s. They're like, oh, no, we can publish a Captain Marvel comic and that's our Captain Marvel. And so technically inside comic books, they can call the character Captain Marvel, but they can't advertise it as such. And so they're just like, fine, we'll just call it Shazam. That's what everybody calls it anyway.
On the cover, he's always winking at you. Like, you know who I am.
This is called the power of Shazam, but the commercial breaks in this they feel very kid-like too because they just repeat a scene twice. When this ends with Tick going, what? And then when it comes back, Barry just says it again and he's like, what?
It's built to eat some time and also to remind the young audience of what just happened when they're being hypnotized by cereal commercials and Nintendo commercials.
And thinking that Guess Who is a game that talks to you.
As a 6-year-old, I knew they didn't talk to you. Come on, kids. Get it together.
It always bothered me growing up when, like, sometimes it'll just be the same few seconds of footage replayed, but most of the time it was new footage and they'd say it differently, probably for that's probably like a union issue or something. You can't play the same line twice. And that bothered the hell out of me because I'm like, well, then he just said it twice.
Am I to believe that the Tick said what twice? But Tick's quite stupid, so I could see him saying that.
That would fit, but not for Barry.
But the fight with Barry's about to get down.
I am the one and only Tick. Prepare to succumb to an irresistible force.
Yeah, well, don't count your weasels before they pop, dink. Sorry about that, Barry. Listen, I think we should talk this over. Oh, this is exactly what my therapist has been talking about.
So if you break down the logistics of this fight that they have, it's basically Barry holding a shield against the Tick for like 20 minutes.
Yes.
Not a lot happens. They get a lot of mileage out of the conversations between them while all this stuff is happening, the conversations that are happening around them in the bar.
Well, there's so many, we've said this out a million of these action cartoons, but you can't punch a guy. It's not what you like. Popeye got to punch people all the time, and it's why I think it's a big reason why Dragon Ball hit so well in America is because you can't directly punch somebody in these old cartoons. And meanwhile, in anime you could, and in Popeye you could. So that's how it is here. Tick should just punch Barry in the face, but instead it is kind of a shove, and he just shoves him to the ground, and later he'll throw him into the air. And it's the same deal, like Tick being wedged against a shield is different from if Barry was just like kicking him a bunch of times. I mean, I guess that's something you could do to your little brother, and they're like, well, what? Do we want some little brother to get punched in the face and killed? And they say it's because they saw it on the Tick?
No, crush him against the wall. Don't kick your little brother. Squish him.
Well, then your little brother's going to get a real kink right there.
That's how it happens, everybody.
But this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode when we go back to the Sidekick Lounge.
Yep, I've been a sidekick for, going on 46 years.
That's dog years.
Been all across this crazy mixed up country, kicking for a hero with a brain of the size of a walnut. And what do I got to show for it? High blood pressure, artificial hip, and a case of the worms. But man, I love it.
Not me, pal. I just want to get back to the jungle. Oh, Borneo, sweet Borneo. If you wanted a snack, you just reached up into a tree and plucked it. Not like here. Oh, no, sir, no. Some hairless jerk had to go and invent money. Some hairless jerk like you. 65 cents for a candy bar? What are you, nuts?
You frighten me terribly. I'd like to go now.
I like how it eventually turns to him being mad at the concept of money and wanting to take it out on Arthur.
He's a helpful sidekick, but he also hates humans. I'm a hairless jerk like you.
And if you look in the scene again, Arthur is basically holding a bottle of Budweiser with the red label and everything. Then they don't say, more soda, Arthur? How are you enjoying your Coca-Cola product? It's just he's holding a beer in this lounge with these other adults. I like that.
Well, adult animals.
Yeah.
I love that speech by the dog, too. Just like, I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, just like a roadie who's like tired, but he loves the biz too much. And Jim Cummings saying, Borneo, sweet Borneo. and that Arthur's just very clean statement of like, I'm scared.
You frighten me terribly.
So then we have some more Barry Tick stuff, which it's another great thing that all the other superheroes are just watching. They're like, nah.
Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah,
I think they know how much destruction the Tick can unleash. They want to stay out of the way.
Yeah, it's true. Only Big Shot tries to fix things in his like nice, comfortable sweater of like, guys, we have to put it in the happy box. But Arthur, meanwhile, heads to the bathroom.
And so he says to me, you got legs, baby. You're everywhere. You're all over the place. Yeah.
Hello?
Hi.
What are you doing?
I just wanted to use the, and so he says, evil's okay in my book. What about yours? And I go, yeah, baby, yeah. I just wanted to wash my hands.
Okay. But why does your bag say bombs on it?
Oh, that's just boom, baby, boom. I'm the evil midnight bomber. What bombs at midnight?
Oh, great.
Eat my smoke, copper.
I really identify with Arthur going to the bathroom at a club and saying, like, I didn't even want to come here.
I feel so bad for him.
He's a good wallflower, that Arthur is. I like that. There's several scenes where Doorman stares at his butt, looks at him, but it's like the camera zooms in on his like little flat butt. It's so weird.
He has no butt.
Maybe I'm just looking at it too much. The great acting on Midnight Bomber trying to be normal. He's like,
And he says an object at rest cannot be stopped.
Yes. Yeah. The one thing I don't like in the Barry sequences that you're going to hear in the rest of these is that when he turns on his shield, there's a constant sound effect the entire time of the shield working, which this is what we talked about on Rocco. Like, these are noisy old cartoons. You can't have a moment of silence. And so you'll hear that here as Barry starts really losing it.
I'm gonna teach you a lesson. You're pinned under my shield. Submit, renounce your name, or I will crush you flat. Never. I wanted you to say that. Good. Or should I say goodbye?
It is great how noisy these cartoons are. It's instead of being scored with farts like in Rocko's Modern Life, it's scored with jazz and like constant sound effects.
Constant, yeah. I also like his going out on Jim Cummings saying "geek geek geek geek." It's a real crazy acting. I am with Barry though that Big Shot offers him a very poor compromise. He's like, you'll go to therapy and the Tick stays the Tick. It's like, hey, fuck you.
Doesn't solve his problem.
They really should set up who was the Tick first. Like, who does have ownership of that?
I like that Big Shot is so into the idea of therapy and helping people and trying to use the same techniques as his therapist used on him on other people.
At that point, it's just about who's more famous. That's how it works in the real world. That's how it's going to work there. Like, it doesn't matter who had it first.
I don't care if you're the first Ghostbusters. You're the shitty Ghostbusters. No one cares.
They should have dug into it more, but it's really just a one-off line that I do like that, Barry's not even a superhero. He's just a rich asshole whose brother owns the club, so he just swings his radio around all the time, which I like that a lot about him. And also, like, Tick has the line of, like, superheroes don't fight, which that really puts you at the time frame. Like, now all it is superheroes fighting. Like, that was...
Was it superheroes don't fight other heroes?
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Superheroes don't fight within themselves, which was a rare thing to happen back then. Like that's why The Dark Knight Returns was such a celebrated comic book, partially because Superman never fought Batman. That doesn't happen. And so they did a whole comic book about that. It was very novel, but that led to about 20 years of superheroes fighting each other, kind of climaxing with Civil War, which then also got the movie treatment as well. And it's all about superheroes fighting each other.
Even outside of Civil War, like every superhero movie has to have them fight at some point. Like that's how the Avengers starts.
Yep. It's because they realize what the kids argue about on the internet isn't can this superhero beat the supervillain, because they always beat the supervillain, but they do argue which hero would beat each other. And so they got to service them fans. That's how it is.
There's an
And
entire
it's like that's valuable time you could be spending with a superhero if you have to develop a villain and make us care about a character who's only going to be in one movie. No, just have the one that's already been in 18 movies.
There's an entire line of comics around this time where DC and Marvel heroes would fight each other.
Yes, the Marvel versus DC mega crossover.
And that was like mid 90s, right? I remember reading
Started
those.
95, 96. It showed you how desperate they were after the 90s comic bust, after the boom, because they're like, shit, we're both losing a bunch of readers. Let's team up together and do a comic about our biggest heroes fighting each other.
Like Batman fought Captain America, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Superman fought the Hulk, Spider-Man fought Superboy, Wolverine fought Lobo, Storm fought Wonder Woman.
And all the fights were voted on by the fans.
Five of them were.
It didn't matter
yeah.
who was what. Just about all the fans. Didn't Quicksilver beat the Flash?
Yes, which was just because X-Men were more popular.
I didn't care about Cape Comics then, and I read those because they were like, well, who would win?
Yes, but they had to. The worst one was that Wolverine beat Lobo, which would never happen. Lobo is Superman level strong. He would turn Wolverine into paste.
Sheriff Lobo?
Yeah, Lobo.
And then it led to the Amalgam Universe, which is a thing that will never, ever happen. Like this whole thing of Marvel and DC crossing over, unless Disney buys Time Warner, like
which
it's
could
never gonna
happen in the
again.
next decade, like, honestly.
My comic reading friend called it Amalgam.
The Amalgam comics are tons of fun, but they're all out of print. And they even created a character they co-owned in there called Access, who is a man who lived in both universes and could teleport between them.
Dark Claw was awesome and remains awesome.
They even did a Dark Claw. They did a comic book that was Dark Claw Adventures based on the Dark Claw cartoon show that didn't exist.
Was that Batman and Wolverine mixed together or something?
Yes.
Okay, man. Well, there should never be another character after that.
It looked exactly like you'd imagine it looks.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
90s
Batman,
as hell.
Wolverine's mask, and claws, and both colors.
We get them chasing down the Midnight Bomber. He's putting bombs everywhere. This was the first time I got the joke that you think Doorman is sensing that a man is going to blow up the club, but he really just notices a sidekick is where he's not supposed to be.
He's doing his job. He's not the bomb man.
Though this is a little more, now that nightclubs have become scenes for terrorism in real life, this is more uncomfortable than
Oh,
it was when
boy.
I was an innocent child.
I didn't think of that, Henry.
Yes, I know. I'm Captain Bring Down out here. I'm a real Debbie Downer. Sorry. As Arthur is trying to warn people and the doorman is fighting with him and Sea Urchin, meanwhile, the Tick is kind of having his amazing Spider-Man 33 moment here under Barry's shield.
Say alcohol.
Okay, Uncle.
No. Renounce your name and call me the Dick.
You are very, 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 very.
Listen, somebody's planting bombs all over the place.
Oh, yeah? And who would that be, sidekick?
He says he's the evil midnight bomber what bombs at midnight.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, sure. That sounds real. Oh, come on. It's not that bad.
Urchin, help!
Oh, okay.
I have to say, replacing the word that with what is just instant laughter from me.
The what? The
what room? No, it's instead of like, are you the guy that plays piano? Are you the guy what plays piano? Like using what instead of that is a great, it's so, I don't know why, but it's funny. It's like a weird antiquated way of talking. It's kind of hillbilly-ish.
Yeah. And I like the cut to the Midnight Bomber saying, yeah, baby, which she was saying that 3 years before Austin Powers made Yeah, Baby famous.
Come on.
And I also love Tick's like, okay, uncle. Like, no, you don't get it. I love Barry's laugh here, and I think in general the voice acting in this is so good because Ben Edlund realized in this script he couldn't count on the animation to deliver a lot of the jokes, so it kind of had to come down to line readings.
It's the power of Jim Cummings' awesome reads here.
Yeah.
And Townsend Coleman.
Yeah. And the way he gets over it is the final rush of strength that the Tick has to defeat Barry is when he realizes he'd have to replace all his stationery if he wasn't the Tick anymore.
That's right. I like his very realistic concerns. Like in the beginning, the guy was like, can you blow up the earth? He's like, that's where I keep all my stuff.
That would suck if I did that. That also reminds me of the, another one where he gets kidnapped by aliens to help him. For him to help them save the world. And he's like, now come on, think of how sad it would be. The world would be dead. And that to power their ship with fear. And he's like, well, it's just too big. I can't think, I'm not scared. Like it's too much to think about. And so then we find out that Tick has only 20 seconds left, which it lasts about 2 minutes, that 20 seconds.
The Comet Club is riddled with bombs, and they're set to blow at midnight.
What do they look like, chum?
Well, they look like that.
Good heavens! They're all over the place.
Yeah, baby. And you've only got 20 seconds before you all eat ceiling!
Well, there's going to be a heck of a line at the Cape, Jack.
Let's go get those bombs, Arthur.
Uh-huh.
That's the first time I made out that line. A heck of a line at the Cape check.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It goes by so fast, only with just audio isolated. I was like, oh, that's what he was saying.
It's too quick. It's also, I guess Agrippa's not scared because he's also almost indestructible. Like, based on what these bombs do when they're finally thrown away, they're not killer bombs. That's a moment that it's funny. Okay, so it's funny that he throws all the bombs onto the Sidekick Lounge. When they just kind of blow up in Looney Tunes fashion and they have like, oh, big eyes and everything, it's like, that's not the level the show's working on, you know?
Yeah, it felt kind of underplayed that, these bombs couldn't actually hurt anyone anyways, so who cares?
They'll mess up your clothes. But it was also funny seeing him pull the air freshener off the wall, like, the air freshener. And his reaction to being told, like, well, what do these bombs look like? He's like, well, there's that one on your chest. He's like, oh, no.
And again, they all are big bombs and say the word bomb on them.
It's another line I love when Arthur says, like, well, why does your bag say bombs on it? In the rest of the episode, when you see it with bombs on it, you think like, well, it's a cartoon. It just says bombs. But having a character out loud say, like, why would you walk around with that? He's like,
It's like carrying around a giant bag with a $sign on it.
Also, there's a bunch of great scenes I did not get of Deflator Mouse, like woofing out on women, but he, like, no means no, Deflator Mouse. Like, Valkyrie, go to another lady, you know?
What does she say? Like, you sicken me.
You sicken me. He's like, it's always about you.
Yeah. That's a real Xavier Renegade Angel comeback.
But the Tick saves the day and beats Barry and the Bomber.
This is wearing a little thin, Barry.
Not Barry! I'm the Tick!
Okay, I'll be Barry and you be the Tick.
Well, all this and a villain, too.
You'll never prove a thing, Copper. I'm just a part-time electrician. Bad is good, baby! Down with government!
It's a fun little rant. I like his anti-government agenda.
Really fits with Timothy McVeigh and the Unabomber.
That is true. Yeah, he was still on the loose, everybody. He was in his stinky cabin right now in history.
Berkeley's own Unabomber.
Should be on the town seal.
You don't see tribute. You see tributes to Philip K. Dick around here. Not him, though.
So many great, insane people were in Berkeley, like Charles Manson and the Unabomber. They don't get enough credit.
And man, ouch at Barry's missing teeth when he comes up and he like that's too that after the cartoony explosion of the Sidekick slide. Meanwhile, we have very realistic missing teeth in a man's face.
They're giant tick head teeth too, so they're very noticeably gone.
Oh. And that's all you have to do with copyright law. It's like, oh, okay, I'm Barry, you're the Tick.
Just getting beaten up was enough to convince him.
And then we, as usual on the show, the Tick gets a nice long monologue about the nature of reality.
What's in a name anyway? If I were called Bob or Jack or Vinny or a piece of fruit, would I be any less a hero? And if Barry were called Rupert, Max, or Rainbow, would he be any less a jerk? I don't think so. Because a name is a rose, and it only smells as sweet as you are.
Very touching.
It's a touching line. I cut out the, speaking of filler, the true end of the episode is then like 20 seconds of Deflator Mouse and Sea Urchin bickering again over a still image.
What were they even bickering about? I forget.
Kid stuff in the backseat.
Yeah.
Like, he went over on my side. He's on my side. That's I mean, it's funny and all.
I always enjoy using Bob as a comedy name.
That's
it's
true.
Good.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
What if he was Bob? Bob, what if?
Or Rainbow.
It's a great little speech from the Tick. This is like so many of these. It makes me want to watch all of the Tick. I busted out my Tick DVD for this.
Ooh, are there commentaries or any extras on this bad boys? Of course not.
The extras are that Ben Edlund drew a new piece of art for the cover.
Nice.
I was going to say that the covers are nice, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Which, hey, there's at least that. The first one is a great Tick pose, and then the second one is an armless Tick from the second season, which another of my favorite ones, where he just loses his arms and he's walking around without arms for a whole episode. There's so many great, talking about this now, there's so many great episodes I want to revisit. There was the multi-episode arc, which was a retelling. So there's the classic joke story that somebody found what they think is a cute dog and it's actually a giant rat. That was a multi-episode arc of the Tick where he gets lost at sea.
Oh, you're right.
And thinks he finds a dog, but it turns out it's a giant rat. And it's still his like animal sidekick, this disgusting giant rat. It's and of course the poor Chris McCullough, he wrote the two episodes that were deleted, the Galactus and the Mole Man episode.
And they would eventually surface on Comedy Central. Right?
Yes, yeah. And also if you get the DVDs in outside of America, like on the UK release, those episodes are there. And they actually got the third season on DVD. We only got the first two seasons.
I think they probably came out just as DVD was sort of drying up, in terms of we can sell anything.
Too long. Yeah. They took too long.
God, that and Pete and Pete never got full DVD season releases.
Just dump it. At least we got the third season of Upright Citizens.
Yes, after 8 years, I think.
Yeah,
something crazy like that.
It took a long time, and it's on a made-to-order DVD. It's the cheapest thing I ever bought.
It's like they're like blue CDRs they send you.
Yeah. But at least they have the commentaries and stuff they recorded. But anyway, any other final thoughts on the Tick, guys?
This show holds up so super well, and it feels it is super. It just feels like the Venture Brothers. Like I don't think that this kind of comedy has gone away. I think that superhero things, as they become more and more popular, they're getting like dissected less, which is an odd thing. Like people don't even like when you make fun of superhero movies on Twitter because you're, I guess, devaluing their life by saying that you don't like a thing that they like. But I don't know. I think I think we need more stuff like this now, especially as all of our movies are superhero movies. We should be making fun of them a little harder, I think.
I agree.
And, I think that all the commentary of these episodes totally holds up and is still true.
Yeah, I feel like I get it now more than ever before, even more than when I watched it on Comedy Central as a young man in his early 20s. And again, so the Venture Brothers are going to have a new season soon. We might be in the middle of it right now. And so they probably won't come back until like 2024. In that time, you can watch these 36 episodes, and it's very Venture Brothers-y. It's not quite as adult. The pacing isn't quite as snappy, but I feel like it hasn't aged too poorly.
No.
In some ways, it is a time capsule, but I also like how dry, and again, the mix of the fantastic and the mundane is just this perfect comedy, this perfect comedy souffle.
It's proto Venture Brothers in so many ways. It almost feels like you shouldn't bring back the Tick because it's like, well, we got Venture Brothers. Like you don't need more Tick. Venture Brothers is doing this in an even better way. And the big difference between Venture Brothers and Tick, I think, is that superheroes are just part of the Venture Brothers world. They're like, well, no, we're also spies, and we're G.I. Joe
and Hardy Boys
and Archie Comics. We're everything, and goths. That too. It's everything they want it to be. And also I was thinking the last Venture Brothers connection I was thinking of watching this was like Tick's monologues are so very Dr. Orpheus too.
You're right. You're so right. And the Monarch looks a lot like Arthur.
Yeah.
And all the hench
all of his
people.
wings jokes are the
Yeah.
same jokes about Arthur's wing. Man, Venture Brothers, it's just the Tick.
Yeah.
Except meaner.
With swears.
Venture Brothers is a darker, meaner place than the Tick, too. I would say
Yeah,
that.
they didn't really lean into the superhero. It took them a while. Like when Captain Sunshine seemed like the only superhero for a while, and now it's like almost all like last season and this season are very much like street level Marvel stuff.
When they moved to New York City, they may as well have just called it the city and been the Tick.
Yeah.
Which I love. I had almost stopped being interested in new seasons of Venture Brothers, but when they went to New York City and it's Marvel's New York City, I'm like, well, shit, this is the greatest again.
So, Matthew, you're a special guest. Let people know where we can find you, where we can give you money, and what kind of stuff you're doing right now.
Hey, please give me money. Check me out on Twitter at Mr. Matt J and at Disney 80s 90s, where I tweet stuff from the Disney company from the 80s and 90s. Like I recently watched the Summer Jam concert at Walt Disney World from 1999, which featured 98 Degrees and Britney Spears and other, I think the Backstreet Boys were there. No, NSYNC was there. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I also have my show on YouTube, youtube.com/cartoons101, where I talk about the history of animation and interesting stories from the medium of animation. I recently did one about the show Joe Pera Talks With You on Adult Swim, which I think is just an astounding show, and I talk about why I like it so much. And you can check me out on Patreon at patreon.com/cartoons101, where you can support everything I do, including live and eat. And where I make an exclusive podcast you can get every week, where I recently went through every episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion with a series of awesome guests like you guys. And you came back for my new series, Satoshi Conversations, where we talk about everything Satoshi Kon ever made. That episode is out now by the time you're listening to this.
All right.
Or maybe it'll be out tomorrow if you're listening to this on
excellent.
Sunday. And I also interviewed Bill Oakley from The Simpsons. I interviewed Scott Gardner. I interviewed Evan Dorkin, who we mentioned earlier. He's an indie comic legend. He was a contemporary of this series as a comic book for sure. So check that all out at patreon.com/cartoons101.
Yes, I recommend giving Matthew J money, but did you know you can also give us money?
What?
That's right, Henry. If you go to our Patreon at patreon.com/talkingsimpsons, that supports our entire network. If you sign up at the $5 a month level, you can get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and ad-free. You could be listening to our episode on One Punch Man, the Lone Cyborg, right now if you sign up. And that also goes for Talking Simpsons a week ahead of time and ad-free on that podcast as well. And we also have so many exclusive series like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, exclusive interviews, behind the scenes stuff. So much exclusive stuff is just waiting for you on Patreon for the low price of $5 a month. If you sign up right now, you will have hundreds of podcasts to listen to and just months of your time listening to us and all of our bonus stuff. Henry, what are some of the most recent bonus things we have waiting on the Patreon for people?
Well, there was our interview with Mike Reese, who is an animation veteran who worked on The Simpsons from season 1 until season 30 right now, but also did The Critic. He worked on Alf. He worked on Queer Duck. We don't ask about that, but we ask about a lot of things. And I'll also direct people to our premium videos, which we, at the $10 level, you can watch. We do one a month. And our most recent ones went through in video form the deleted scenes of season 7 of The Simpsons, as well as the deleted scenes in the first season of Futurama for a lot of fun.
That's right, and our most recent live show is now on the Patreon too, so you can listen to that if you weren't in SF for the live show, and I thought it went really well. So again, that is patreon.com/talkingsimpsons. So much is waiting there for you. Check it out, please. As for me, I've been your host, one of your hosts rather, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo, and I have another podcast, by the way, if you haven't heard of it. It's Retronauts, a classic gaming podcast that is every Monday at retronauts.com, or look for Retronauts in your podcast device. We've been going on since 2006. There's got to be a topic we've done that interests you if you care about video games. And if you don't, well, sir, I disapprove of you and your lifestyle. Henry, where can we find you?
HENEREYG on Twitter. When I tweet out things that we're doing on the podcast network, you'll find out about it first on my Twitter. So follow me there.
Thank you so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week with the One Punch Man episode, The Lone Cyborg. We'll see you then.